Welcome back to Occupy Dallas live stream. This is your brief. They've taken a break. One of the jurors wanted a drink, so they took a break. And let me tell you what happened. When I walked in, a person not involved with La'Shadion's case was sitting in the hallway, and she saw all the activist support coming in, and she got curious. She said, she kind of overheard me and Marjorie Elizabeth Stakely talking about the case. She became curious and asked me. Now, I did not know any jurors were present or anything. So I started explaining, what happened to La'Shadion and how ridiculous the basis of the case is, thinking about the Duck Dynasty. Okay, I'm getting interference. Okay, I'm getting interference. The stream is being shut down. We're getting interference. I'm trying to give you a brief of what's going on. And as I was saying, I started explaining the case to a stranger in the hallway outside of the courtroom before the trial started. And before we even finished telling her what happened to La'Shadion and why we thought it was ridiculous with so many Duck Dynasty carriers of assault weapons in the grocery store with babies, all holding them in the same way. So that was the basis of the ridiculosity of the case, and we were explaining that to the stranger, and suddenly Cameron, if you remember Cameron Gray, who we interviewed at the first trial, rushed out to us and just said, you gotta stop. You gotta stop talking. You can't talk about the case out here in the hallway in front of the courtroom. The judge has sent me out here to stop you. You were heard talking in the hallway. You cannot talk in the hallway. You might prejudice the jury. So, of course, we stopped talking, and the trial got started. The prosecution lawyer telling the story, which sounded very skewed. He seemed fairly stiff as he spoke. Again, this judge, I love this judge. This judge has the most apparent frustration and frustrated countenance that he gets on his face for any waste of taxpayer money for frivolous actioning by the Fort Worth DA office. He's incensed that you bring me real trials, and of course the facts that came out in the first trial are probably very fresh on his mind. I don't know how a retrial can occur with the same judge. That does the judge not remember the first trial? And so, we have that going on. But that look, on this judge, look, the jury is not out. He seems a wonderful jurist. He has this look of frustration every time the DA goes into any sketchy territory. However, as I noted later in my notes, he is overruling every single defense objection. We have not heard a sustained objection. So the issues being raised by the prosecution had to do with their intention to shut down the concert. The protesters were saying, shut it down. Sorry, ODTV does not film children. You know, if you're an activist that protesters chant, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. That's just a common chant. But, and she testified, the director of the Levitt testified first. She testified that she is aware of protesting, that she was even aware of Christian, and therefore, if you are aware of protesting, you are aware of the chants. The chants like shut it down. It's the most common protest chant there is. So, therefore, her testimony was a little strange to hear that she thought that meant they were there to shut down the concert. At concerts. And she was a little flustered as she said that. Okay. There were discrepancies about whether La'Shadion and the other open carry participants of the protest was a part of the protest, but the defense established fairly clearly that they were standing in the same place, a part of the protest group, that they were definitely a part of the protest, so that pathway by the prosecution was fairly well shut down. The discrepancy between wanting to shut down the concert as opposed to give a message. And again, it has come out in the first trial and again in this trial that the band invited the protesters, go ahead and speak. We're with you. Later we're going to see extended footage. We will actually hear what the band said to La'Shadion, who was at one point speaking on the stage. The issue of the calling of the police were present with La'Shadion right in front of him at least like 4 times, but they never determined that he was holding his weapon in a threatening way. That takes us forward to when La'Shadion blew a whistle, which is what they protesters were practiced to know means, okay, let's move as a group, we're moving. And this was a signal that they were leaving. They had made their statement at the concert and that they were leaving. So by leaving, and people still being there, this brings into great question this issue of fear, intense fear happening in the crowd. Okay, in the film we saw in the earlier trial, children were playing right in front of La'Shadion with the rifle. So if the Fort Worth DA has now gone to a fear tactic, that fear will be their main tactic in testimony and prosecution, then we may be looking at a fairly decent chance for La'Shadion because fear has fairly well been refuted, very well. You know, the desire to shut us down from even giving a brief is kind of apparent. But I am all the way on the other side of the courthouse from the trial. The disorderly conduct was in order to create alarm. That is a goal of the jury buying that by the DA, but it was contended by the defense. Resist the arrest. These were the 2 charges delineated in the storytelling before the trial. But then as the trial began, they were being refuted by the defense. And it was, the defense seemed intensely interested in establishing that it was the gun itself and no actions of La'Shadion which caused fear, and therefore Um, the case, that is not the case against La'Shadion. Therefore, there's no case. I mean, if La'Shadion himself was not doing something to disrupt, to disturb the peace, to frighten people, threatening specific people, and the judge, with a frustrated look hanging his head, seems to support that premise. Okay, Patty Dew, the director of the Levitt, was back. She tells us how she's been really a part of going to the Levitt for so long, and then became a board member. Talked about the kind of concerts they have, the proximity. He set up context. They set up context by talking about all of that. They wanted to establish the relationship between her and Lieutenant Daniels. This is fairly interesting. In the first trial, he maybe slipped it out that they were personal, longtime friends. And this time she was very careful not to delineate that. She never mentioned that they were personal, longtime friends this time. I certainly hope the judge noticed that. She seemed to think that the band would give them the opportunity to protest after the concert, and that that's how they should have done it. So she testified that half the crowd left, so of course the defense went to establish how many were there in the first place. 1,500 would have had to leave for a 3,000-person crowd. Did anyone call 911 when people were leaving in fear? No. All right, and they talked some more, the defense talked some more with her about vertical and angled holding of an assault weapon pointed at people, threatening people, or just holding. Again, what was last stated in court was that not his actions, but the gun itself. And at the point of the departure of the protesters from the stage, this is something we did not know at ODTV at first. It was the first time that the gun was attempted to be seized. I'm not sure why the arrest and everything else did not proceed right then. Because, again, we heard in the first trial that he was all the way as I was saying before we were shut down, we are getting that shutdown interference. We're going to get that a lot. That is the part of the game as activist news people. As I was saying, he was shoved into a stone wall, and so that did not occur. That was two separate incidents. And what is significant is an officer tried to remove the gun illegally from La'Shadion. It was his right to keep his weapon, and he did. That attempt failed. And the next thing that happened was he moved all the way over by a stone wall, where he was able to be shoved into the stone wall, and then a weapon was seized. At that instance of brutality, the weapon was seized. So that's two separate issues and incidents. what's significant is he was not taken into custody after the first attempted seizure, and that definitely means something. It means that that officer ran through the actual law in his head and said, I'm not in the right here. I can't take this weapon, so he desisted from trying. And later, the police got the personal friend of hers who's on the police force, made sure it was communicated that it would be taken. Okay. So, this is interesting. At one point, okay, we apologize, live viewers. This phone has been targeted. We've already ordered another one. It's such a sorry state of affairs. They are actually targeting journalist activists. So we're getting shutdowns at every event that we film across the country. Obviously, they have the ability to shut a phone down and cause it to shut down. As I was saying, the jury, the gallery laughed at that because the defense asked you, so you say she was scared, but this picture shows her smiling, so you say he's acting here? And the gallery broke out in laughter. And again, this wonderful judge, he just